Imagine walking into a room, and the person you secretly want to notice you is there, but they barely even look your way. You sit down, you try to act normal, maybe you say something, but the moment passes. And later that night, you replay everything in your head, wondering, why don't they notice me? Now here's the strange part. It's not because you're not interesting. It's not because you don't have anything to offer. It's because you're focusing on the wrong thing. Most people try to be impressive. They talk more. They try to sound smarter. They try to stand out. But this is where everything goes wrong. Because people don't remember how impressive you are. They remember how they feel around you. And once you understand this, everything starts to change. There's something almost invisible happening in every interaction. Every person you meet is carrying a small emotional gap. Something they want, jayat, but rarely receive. And the moment you give them that feeling, they start to remember you. Not logically, emotionally. But here's where it gets interesting. You can't just guess what someone needs. You have to notice it. Imagine you're sitting across from someone, talking casually. Maybe about work or random daily stuff. Their tone is flat. Their posture is relaxed. Nothing special. Then suddenly, something shifts. They lean forward. Their eyes light up. Their voice gets faster. They start talking more than before. That moment right there is everything. Most people completely miss it. They're too busy thinking about what to say next. But you're watching. Because that shift reveals what they care about. Let's say you casually mention fitness, and suddenly they start talking about their workout routine. They sit up straighter. They start explaining details. They even smile more. That's not random. That's a signal. Or maybe you're talking about careers. And they mention wanting to start something on their own. But when they say it, they hesitate. They repeat themselves. They look at you for a reaction. That's another signal. They're not just talking. They're testing. Testing if you see them, or if you'll dismiss them like everyone else. But here's the part most people never realize. Once you notice these signals, you can understand what kind of emotional gap they have. And there are a few common ones. The first type is someone who craves validation. You'll recognize them easily. They talk about what they've done, their achievements, their progress. Sometimes they repeat the same story more than once. Now imagine this. They're telling you about something they accomplished. Maybe they finished a big project. Maybe they hit a personal goal. You nod. You say, "That's amazing." And for a moment, they smile. But then, it fades. Because they've heard that before. It doesn't stick. This is where most people fail. They give direct compliments, and direct compliments feel good, but only for a few seconds. Instead, you do something different. You shift the interaction. You lean slightly forward and say, "Wait, how did you actually manage that?" Now they pause. Because instead of being praised, they're being respected. They start explaining, going deeper, sharing details. And you listen, not just to respond, but to understand. Then you say something simple. "I never thought about it that way." And suddenly, something clicks inside them because you didn't tell them they were impressive. You treated them like they are. And that hits deeper. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Imagine later in the conversation, you casually say, "I was talking to someone the other day, and your name came up." Now they look at you differently. Because now, they're not just seen by you, they feel seen by the world. And that feeling stays. Have you ever met someone who made you feel like that? Like they truly noticed something about you that others didn't? That's not an accident, that's awareness. But this is just one type. And here's where things go deeper. The second type of person isn't looking for validation. They're dealing with fear. Picture this. You're talking to someone, and they start telling you about a big goal. Something that could change their life. Maybe they want to switch careers. Start something new. Take a risk. At first, they sound excited. But then, their tone shifts. They start mentioning how hard it is, how uncertain it feels, how they're not sure if it will work. And now there's a pause. This is where most people jump in. They start giving advice. "You should do this. Try that. Don't worry, you'll be fine." But watch what happens. The other person nods, but their energy drops because advice isn't what they needed. They already know what to do. What they don't have is certainty. So instead of trying to fix them, you do something unexpected. You slow down. You let the silence sit for a moment. And then you say, "That actually makes sense." Now they look at you, surprised. Because you didn't dismiss their fear. You understood it. And this is where everything starts to shift. Because instead of trying to remove their fear, you sit with it. Imagine them looking down for a second, thinking. Their fingers tapping lightly on the table. There's a quiet tension in the air. And you say honestly, anyone in your position would feel the same way. They slowly nod. Not because you solved their problem, but because you made them feel normal. And that feeling is rare. But here's where it goes deeper. Instead of giving advice, You tell a story. Someone I know was in almost the exact same situation. No experience. No clear path. They were completely unsure if it would work, but they kept going anyway. Now the other person leans in slightly. Because now, they're not alone anymore. They told me the hardest part wasn't the work, it was the doubt. But once they pushed past that, things started to open up. You pause, and in that silence, something changes. Because now their mind is filling in the gap. If that person could do it, maybe I can too. You didn't push them. You didn't lecture them. You simply gave them something they were missing. Hope. Have you ever had a conversation like that? Where someone didn't try to fix you, but somehow made you feel stronger anyway? That's the difference. And this leads to something even more subtle. The third type of person carries a wound. You won't always see it immediately, but it shows up in small moments. Imagine you're talking to someone, and a certain topic comes up. Maybe relationships, maybe a past failure. Their expression changes. They smile, but it's forced. They look away for a second. And then, they say something like, "Yeah, that didn't really work out." And then they laugh it off. But the energy drops. That's not just a story. That's something unresolved. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They try to make the person feel better instantly. You're too good for them anyway. It wasn't meant to be. You'll find something better. But it sounds empty. Because it ignores what they actually feel. So instead, you take a different approach. You gently shift how they see the situation. Let's say they were rejected. You pause for a moment, then say, "Wasn't that person going through a lot at the time?" They stop. Thinking, you continue, "I remember you saying they had just come out of something complicated, right? Now?" They nod. And something changes. Because now, it's no longer just about them being not enough. It becomes about timing, circumstances, context. You didn't erase the pain, but you removed the meaning that was hurting them. Or, imagine they talk about a past failure. They look slightly embarrassed. Their shoulders drop a little. And you say, "But that's also the moment where you learn the most, right?" Now they pause, because you just turned something negative into something valuable. And suddenly, Nenzi, they're not the person who failed. They're the person who grew. But here's the part most people never realize. You're not changing their past. You're changing how they carry it. And when someone feels lighter after talking to you, They remember you. Now at this point, you might be thinking, so, if I just do all of this, people will naturally be drawn to me? Not exactly. Because there's one final piece that makes all the difference, and without it, everything you've learned so far loses its power. Timing. Imagine this. You talk to someone, and every single time, you validate them. You support them. You give them exactly what they need. At first, it feels amazing. But after a while, it becomes normal, expected, and slowly, it loses its impact. Now imagine something different. One day, you have a deep conversation. You notice their energy. You respond in a way that makes them feel seen. They leave that interaction feeling different, lighter, stronger, more understood. But the next time you talk, you're just normal. You laugh. You keep it casual. You don't go deep. And they feel it. Not in a bad way, but in a noticeable way. There's a small gap, and here's what happens inside their mind. Why did that conversation feel different last time? Now they're thinking about you. And the next time they see you, there's anticipation because they don't know what they're going to get. And that unpredictability creates emotional impact. It's the same reason people check their phones constantly. Sometimes there's something exciting. Sometimes there isn't. But the uncertainty keeps them coming back. And this is where everything connects. When you occasionally give someone exactly what they need, and then step back, you create space. And in that space, they start to think about you. They start to remember how they felt. They start to want it again. But here's the most important part. This only works if it's real. If you're pretending to care, be easy. People will feel it. Eventually. If you're using this just to manipulate, it won't last. Because real connection can't be faked for long. But when you genuinely pay attention, when you actually listen, when you truly understand what someone needs in that moment, something interesting happens. They start opening up more. They start seeking you out. They start remembering small things you said. Imagine your phone lighting up, and it's them. Not because you tried to impress them, but because of how they feel when they talk to you. And this is where everything comes together. People don't get attached to the loudest person in the room. They don't get attached to the most impressive one. They get attached to the person who understands them. So if you remember nothing else, remember this. First, pay attention to the moment someone's energy changes. That's where the truth is. Second, Respond to what they feel, not just what they say. And third, don't give it every time. Let it come naturally. Now I'm curious. Which one do you notice most in people around you? And have you ever met someone who made you feel this way? If you have, you already know how powerful this is. And if you haven't, you might become that person for someone else.